assume that we are live now. All right, we can just jump right in. So first and foremost, thank you to all of the panelists that I have here today joining me. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you to all the attendees who might be watching us live right now. And then anyone who might be watching the recorded version afterwards, thank you to you as well. Before we jump in, we can start off with just a round of introductions. And my idea is if you can we'll just go panelist by panelist. If you can just introduce yourself, maybe tell us where you currently work or previous relevant roles, just so that we can better understand the context of where you're coming from and kind of how you're looking at all of this. Maybe generally just what kind of business, is it e-com, is it services, is it SaaS, those kind of things. And then once we do those intros, we can dive right in and start getting into the questions. But I'm going to pick on Val. Val, you can jump in first and introduce yourself for us.
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Val. I am the Director of Customer Experience at Fuel, responsible for the customer-facing teams. Fuel is an e-com business. We largely handle print on demand on the scale of partnering with Amazon, Shopify, Etsy, and any other marketplaces and platforms that help you create and sell your brand. So very excited to talk about this. It's something I discuss with my team every day. So very keen on hearing what others are going through. And yeah, excited to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. Siobhan, you want to jump in next?
Sure. My name is Siobhan Heiser, and most recently I was working with Heartbeat, which is a community management platform, and it helps solopreneurs and small businesses have a community that they can charge memberships for, sell courses, that kind of thing. And prior to that, I was with Hotjar for almost 8 years in a support role. Oh, forgot to say, at Heartbeat, I was head of support. And at Hotjar, I was a product support team manager. So SaaS, both were SaaS companies.
Very nice. Luis, want to jump in next?
Sure. I am currently with, I'm a senior operations manager. I work for an agency, XF Agencia. We are in the business of launching brands and taking the products to market. So, prior to that, I worked for, on Amazon devices for quite a few years, but I kind of shifted. I went from starting in CS, moving up, through the CS, and then eventually going into engineering, and then now back to operations, first overseeing customer experience, and then now as a senior operations manager, assistant director, overseeing a few different supply chain, sales, as well as customer experience.
Nice. More of a holistic view on things. Perfect. And then Steven, you can finish this up here.
Right on. Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Steven. I'm the Director of Member Experience at Borrowell. We are a Canadian fintech company, so financial technology company. I've been in the fintech space for the last 7 years. And essentially at Borrowell, we really just want to make Canadians feel confident about money. So we give folks their Equifax credit score for free, work with the big banks and other financial partners within Canada, just to offer our members, our customers, just the best products that they can get depending on their credit score, along with a couple of in-house products such as Credit Builder and Rent Advantage, just to help individuals reestablish their credit scores and build their credit scores. And so I know everyone just met me, but maybe to break the ice a little bit, fun fact about me is you'll likely never find anyone more competitive than myself when it comes to playing board games. Settlers of Catan is an all-time favorite. So yeah.
Oh, that's my board game too. We might have to sync on that after this.
That's a good one.
We'll keep it friendly.
There you go.
Awesome. Well, thanks, y'all. And then last, my name is Jacob, and I've worked on Tidio's solutions team for about 3 years now, mainly helping to deploy frontline AI agents across customer experience, be it sales, support, retention, those kind of things. And so really about solutioning and finding the right tools for the right job. And we can jump right into the juicy bits of things today. We're talking about the business value of customer experience. So in other words, how is customer experience or CX impacting or maybe positioned to impact business growth, revenue, retention, those kind of things. And the very first question that we'll lead off with, and we can go in reverse order, so I'll let Stephen take the first stab at this. But just trying to establish, when did you first start seeing customer experience as a revenue driver rather than purely support? So rather than, a cost center, where did you start seeing the growth opportunities? And this is kind of a multi-pronged question. So where did you first start seeing it? Was it, right when you started in the industry? Was it something relatively recent? And so kind of with that, is it a new concept? And if it is new, or if there's pieces of it that are new, what's new about that?
Yeah, happy to kind of lead the discussion off in here. Is it a new concept? I don't feel like it is a new concept. Personally, I feel like it's been around for quite some time, but I think that in the last few years, we've definitely started seeing a shift, I think, as more leaders in the space are thinking about this more. And I think what's really created that shift is the push towards more like subscription-based businesses. I think there's been a huge push for that in the last few years. And I think that companies, leaders, C-suite in general, they're realizing that it's a lot more cost effective to try to retain your members, reduce churn, like kind of keep your customers around versus trying to acquire new customers. That's a lot more expensive. Sure. So I feel like that shift is really changing, and especially in the age of technology right now, any bad experience gets shared on Reddit, on
Sure.
Apple reviews, Google reviews, online, and sharing bad experiences becomes easier than ever right now. And so there's definitely, I think, a push and realizing that, hey, customer experience matters. It really can drive revenue within the business. And there's been more of a shift, in my opinion, towards that. I think a lot of companies are just trying to figure out what that balance is and how they want to prioritize that. But in my perspective, that's what I've seen.
No, that makes total sense. Luis, anything to add on that as far as just where you've seen it? I know we kind of established the different businesses that people work in, and I think it's also probably your idea of this concept, or when you saw it, or how you treat it, definitely changes based on the type of business you're in. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I could just say, from like just starting with this agency, like one of the first assignments that I had was, taking this, creating a self-service portal, right? And so, going back and forth and trying to use internal resources, I just, and looking at like, the cost per contact, and and what was the highest, what was costing us the most. But and then really just like taking it and then introducing retention, because we had created this like tiger team where they were just going in, and our original model with our first like brand, which is Neuro, was really like retention heavy. Like, let's just retain LTV, whatever we got to do, save. And then we just created this tiger team, and they said, you know what? We had a new brand that we launched, Lunavia. Lunavia is doing very well, but we wanted to take this a step back and say, we want to be a lot more customer centric, right? Let's take this approach. And so at the same time, I'm doing all this tech ops stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, let me see. So I found a partner. We built out this tool. We can like the internal tool we built. They had no reporting. This was just way more, robust in that sense. And we just introduced downsell, right? So we did put all the downsell in our self-service portal through those like various like flows, whether it's like return and cancellation. And then so now we see the difference, right? And so then we had this challenge of like re-educating our workforce to understanding what it meant to be customer centric, and to kind of move away from this really heavy retention, friction heavy, type of methodology. So we've really seen that transition, and we've seen that value, because one of the first things I had to do when I first, the first thing I was like, okay, this is costing this much. When the CEO first seen the bill, I have had a conversation with my director about it, but eventually we've seen the cost and the savings and the value, right? And so now we roll it out across all of our brands, right? Sure. So like I really seen what that value meant, and switching over that mindset, because that was always my mindset. I was like, dude, CX is a cost factor. It is what it is. It's just a cost, but it really isn't. And like with like even having new tools, like I'm looking into different ways to like like recovery of carts now that I got sales, and I'm looking at sales and looking at, okay, well, what tools do I have in play now, like Tidio? What can I do with the leads there? What can I do with these flows? And so really like looking at to all these things, but I've really taken retention. And I think that was one of the things, like when we had our first discussion, is like, what does like net retention look like? And so we really started to understand that metric.
Yeah, super nice. And Siobhan, first time coming across the concept. Day one, always have seen it. Is it old? Is it new?
So like many folks, many years ago when I was at university, I had a call center job doing customer support for a cable and internet company. And as part of the calls that we would get, people can't get online, their set-top box, wasn't working in some way. At the end of the call, you were supposed to upsell them something like, hey, do you want an additional set-top box? Would you like to, add this channel package, whatever. I got a lot of bonuses for upsells. Support was directly a revenue center because those people had a problem, they called in, we solved it, there was more money made. So when we look at modern companies, SaaS companies, I think a good example from Heartbeat is that one of the features allowed community owners to set up events and charge for them. But the way it was working was this kind of like complicated workaround. There was a whole Help Center article about it. I revamped it once I started. And I had some users that I know were pretty smart and quick on the pickup. And they'd be like, Siobhan, I have followed this guide twice. I still cannot get this to work. So I went to product. I was like, hey, look, we get these tickets. It takes us like an hour to like untangle what they've done trying to follow this workaround. Product was like, yeah, we see this can be a problem. So they revamped the whole thing. So much easier now. How does this tie to revenue? Well, if people can't use, if the whole point of your product is we want you to manage your community and host stuff here and you'll make money, we'll make money, everyone's happy. But if they can't get their paid event set up, they're not making money, and then we're not making money either. So tickets about how to set up paid events dropped like overnight once this new feature was rolled out. And we had some town halls, and we hear on tickets as well from users who are just like, oh my God, I love this feature. It's so great. It's so easy. That meant people were going to stick around. We got their payment processing fees, which ups revenue. It's hard to look at a bunch of tickets and be like, oh, this specific support thing translates into this kind of revenue and retention and all of that. But how much churn risk was avoided because people no longer got stuck trying to set that feature up. So it's things like that when support is enmeshed in the company, specifically with product and having that product feedback loop, that's where you find real value.
Yeah. Love that. Val, take us home on this one. When did you first come across kind of tying growth to the CX side of things?
Well, definitely agree with everyone who's spoken out about this already. I'd also say that now you see with AI, finally, the first time we say this word in today's all right, let's count how many times we say it. AI highlights inefficiencies and things that need much more attention, that require, I'd say, tender love and care on a larger scale, and things become messy if you do not have that set up. And now at Fuel, at least, we see a much more customer-centric approach to how we do everything when it comes to marketing, when it comes to support, success, how we approach communities as well within the social, right? So we want to make sure we have a very close proximity and establish a level of trust with our customers to where they do feel that we are like a reliable business partner for them. And that being said, if it is building up trust, if it's building up those relationships to where you feel like you can grow your businesses, that's what we're supporting at Fuel. We're supporting small and medium and different size merchants to grow their businesses. Then they need to make sure that we are reliable, and that means building up on the customer experience across the board, wherever it is built up. So it is a very big business factor that we pay a lot of attention on the company level. We look at overall customer sentiment. We look at, on the larger scale, where can we grow their confidence? Where can we prove to them that so we can absolutely, get them to the finish line with their sales.
Sure. Yeah. So I think kind of the general consensus is it's definitely not a brand new concept. We didn't all see this the first time in 2026 and think, wow, groundbreaking. But it does sound like technology, kind of to Stephen's point, like more SaaS-based businesses and services. And then to Val's point, like just being an end user of that technology and the business tools that we have has made it maybe put it under a spotlight or just made it a little bit more important than it was in previous years when we had less control over these things. And that makes sense to me. Before we do move on, I also want to call out the message in the chat. That is true. If you do have any questions, anyone who's attending right now, please do put those questions into the chat and we can find a nice time to answer those. You know what? Now that we're talking about it, let's do it right now because one just came in. So this is more a question for Siobhan with her experience in both CX support and having worked at Hotjar. You mentioned wanting to see what users were doing when they were stuck. Have you ever explored connecting live user events captured by Hotjar into the CX support agent for better context or analyzing what they did when opening that ticket? Big question to unpack there.
Yeah, actually at Hotjar, we ate our own dog food a lot. Someone would write in with this question, and he'd be like, "How? What did they do?" Well, you know what? We could go look at recordings and heat maps. And actually, the recordings were so helpful because you could tell what time the ticket came in, so you could look for a recording from their user that was in that time frame. A bit more complicated to look them up than what I'm sharing here, but sometimes there was a recording and you were able to see it. It doesn't capture every session because, they were sampled, but yeah, it's really helpful. I know that I'm more familiar with Zendesk than Intercom, but I know that Zendesk has some third-party marketplace apps that allow you to connect like PostHog and some other screen recording tools right in there so that you can have this like all-in-one kind of view. And I'm sure that other platforms like Help Scout and whatnot have something similar.
Sure. Super cool. Oh, they tagged onto this and we'll address this and then we'll move on. But what about connecting the events in real time into the CX agent for better AI responses? Maybe a future idea.
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. The more data that you can feed into whatever chatbot or, system on the back end that you're using to manage those incoming queries, anything that's going to help you flag that and change the priority. Like if you could tell that someone was getting stuck in a certain area, there's things you can set up, filter it, whatever. But yeah, if someone keeps clicking on the login button and nothing's happening, then maybe flag those tickets so they get up to the, higher in the queue and prioritize them. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes total sense. And then before we get into kind of the best practices and maybe real examples and things like that, I did want to ask if there's any like common misconceptions that leaders have about the business value of the CX team or of the CS team, or if there's any false summits in a way where you're kind of spending resources and time chasing this thing that is distracting you from being able to focus on growth and stuff like that. So Val, we'll let you take this one off.
I'd say that one of the biggest ones is that businesses, I'd say outdated businesses, consider it a very heavy cost center. And if that's the case, that immediately put so many blockers for actual customers, not the teams discussing problems with customers, but actual customers lose that assistance because they need to probably grow smaller, not larger. They have to grow, they have to be more effective, they have to be efficient, but you have to do it with less each year. Probably every single person who is listening or will listen to this, who is a leader in support or CX, has faced a situation where finance or accounting comes to you and says, hey, you need to cut back, right? And at the same time, we understand that. Absolutely, you have to be more efficient and you can't grow an army of support agents. But at the same time, I think that that would be bringing larger, not growth, not retention, but gradual deflection and gradual disengaging emotionally of your customer base.
Sure. Yeah. If you're focused on cutting costs, then your hands are tied in a sense, or you're being asked to run a race, but you've got some weights on you as far as chasing that initiative.
And Jacob, maybe if
Siobhan,
I
or anything different, yeah.
Jacob, maybe if I can just tag in here, because I think I just wanted to like add to that overall sentiment, because I think as leaders within the customer or the CX space, like it's our job to really be that voice, because I think many do view it as a cost center, and I think we are in that transition right now of how can CX be positioned as more of a value add to the business versus just seen as that cost center. And I think there's a lot of like misconceptions, or a lot of, like, as you mentioned, Jacob, kind of those false summits where individuals believe that kind of AI replaces those relationships. And yes, it can scale, it can help scale dramatically, but I think in today's day and age, customers and users still want empathetic responses. They want confidence that their questions are being addressed and their inquiries are being addressed. And so I think the organizations or the companies that do it best use AI to kind of like augment human interactions, and not really, it's not there to like completely eliminate it. And finding that how can humans work alongside AI, and what does that handoff look like, creates, I think, like the best room for like a really great customer experience. And then also, and just to kind of add to that as well, I think the other kind of misconception, or the other thing, is like AI solves everything, so let's just automate everything.
Sure.
And it just kind of, I mean, I think we've all experienced some sort of chat function where you can't get your question escalated. You just end up in this like this rotating loop of just these flows that just aren't really helping, and everyone thinks that they're doing a great job and like they got high deflection, but the overall interaction is poor. So I think that I just wanted to kind of add to that as well, because that's we really need to be the voice for our customers.
Yeah. No, and even at Tidio, like part of the equation is we definitely want to identify the cases and the areas that we can automate using conversational AI, maybe just more of the transactional stuff where speed is really like the main metric that the customer is going to care about in that. But then it's also just as important for us to think about what are all the areas we absolutely do not want the conversational AI agents to be getting involved or, helping in that sense. And so sometimes the prompting is telling the AI what not to help with or how it should be doing those escalations. So no, I think that makes perfect sense. And we don't have to go in order. Siobhan or Luis, anything to add to that? Maybe just false summits in general. I figured cost cutting would be for sure the largest one that ends up kind of getting in the way.
Sure. So, AI has, obviously just really taken over a lot of discussions about support. I heard someone that I have a lot of respect for say recently that they think in a year no one's going to be answering tickets. It's all going to be AI. And I'm like, not sure about that. But it, like with any industrial revolution, which is what AI is, it's kind of crazy. It's not always the greatest thing, but it's not going away. Someone still has to tend the machines. When they started automating looms, to weave fabric, someone still had to stand there and watch it. So someone still has to set up these bots. And in order to set up a good bot that's not going to do what Stephen was saying, it's just like these terrible conversations where you're not getting anywhere, someone has to know the product. They have to know your platform. They have to know what your customers are talking about. They have to understand all of that to make these things work and function. So you can't really discount customer experience teams because we are the front line on the customers. We are talking to customers every single day, and we have to, keep all of that in mind. I think the other important thing too is that too often I feel that people outside of support see support as this like siloed thing that's separate from the company. It is, it's not as important. They would never say this, of course, but that's what they think. And when, like I said earlier, about the event ticketing thing, when support is seen as a silo and not really given the same credibility as every other team in the company, then you end up with features that are broken because, developers don't know that things are not functioning unless it's an actual bug. When there are things that are in the UX, the user experience, the customer experience team hears about it. And so when we can have that good product feedback and it's not a silo or a part of the team, just like everyone else, then that can really help your product thrive and show a lot of business value.
For sure. Yeah. First line of defense to hear about anything that comes up. Our support team, they are hailed as heroes at our organization. So yeah, we definitely know that if anyone knows anything about the customer, it is the support team. No shots at the product team. The product team knows too, because they talk to the support team though.
Exactly. They should.
And then Luis, on your end, we kind of mentioned, so just cost cutting and that kind of thing. And then, yeah, just the siloed nature of support teams can get in the way of progress. Anything to add on to that? Just
I mean, I think that's what I deal with, right? Like today, like, you know, one, it's definitely siloed and you know, and it's like unspoken, but that's fine. And, you know, I oversee it, but I think, just, you know, when you think about cost, cost cutting and inefficiency, like, I think when they brought me in, they thought that I was going to be like the executioner. And I was going to bring in a bunch of tech, and I was going to eliminate roles. And, you know, this is, you know, just piggybacking. It's just like, I think we've developed in CX and in general as an organization. And so, like, what we would have just say, oh, these are entry level positions, right? They're no longer per se entry level positions, right? Because they've advanced, right? Because now there's maintenance, there's so much more, there's knowledge building, there's so much more that goes into just, you know, these cost efficient or these new technological advancements. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. I would say that, you know, in terms of like a fall summit, obviously, you know, high deflection and all that. But I think from just on the topic of what we're saying in technology and where we're going, I think definitely, you know, we want to, you know, understand where we're going and understand the future of what CX is.
Sure. Yeah. Knowledge building. Think about frontline AI agents, like they need data, they need knowledge. Yeah, Siobhan.
Just wanted to add on to something that Luis said about how it's not an entry-level job anymore. And that is so true, because once you have your chatbot set up and your chatbot is handling all the I lost my password tickets, you are left with things like, I cannot figure out why this feature isn't working, and you need to review logs and all this stuff. So your support agents can't be that 18-year-old kid out of high school. Your support agents need to be someone that has some experience with complex troubleshooting, you know, not afraid to click buttons and see what happens. And they have to have some pretty deep technical knowledge. Even if they're not developers themselves, they have to be able to think like in a systems way. So I think you're spot on, Luis. It's not an entry level anymore.
Is anyone else dealing with that across your orgs? Just, is it getting more difficult to find people that can do the role when it comes to, knowledge management and these kind of things, or just a kind of a trend just to be aware of?
Yeah, maybe to speak on that a little bit. I think one trend that I've seen over the last few years, because historically, kind of before the big AI kind of rush and popularity, I would say that like it was quite common to churn through support teams on a yearly basis, just because it was seen a little bit more at that entry level. But now looking back, we've got a very senior team. Folks have been on our team for 4 or 5, pushing 6 years now, and it is something that I think people are getting excited. That's what I see on my team, is people aren't afraid of the AI. They, I think, are excited of what it means for their career development, for their opportunities. They get to work on more of those complex tasks, more difficult interactions, more enjoyment and fulfillment out of the work versus those, password resets, questions that come in. So we've seen a pretty kind of dramatic shift in that, actually, where we have a very senior team now as a result of that. And I think that's going to continue to be the trend moving forward.
I think support has been, for probably the past, 15 years, a career and not an entryway, because it used to be, if you wanted to work at a company, back in the 90s or whatever, you got your foot in the door by doing customer support, and then you would go be a manager of accounting or something, who knows, but it was not support related. But it's not that way anymore.
Sure. And then you could go and branch off into those things, because at the end of the day, support knows so much about the business and so much about the product and about the customers. No, that definitely makes sense. And shifting just to more practical application, and we don't need to like reveal any secret sauce or company secrets or anything like that, but we want to talk about in your organization, how is CX connected to the broader business goals like growth, retention, expansion? What are the most important metrics that are coming up as far as what the support team is focusing on in regards to driving growth? And we can start back and work back from you, Stephen.
Start with me. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, and maybe I think it leads into like one of the questions in the Q&A as well, just around what are your preferred methods for helping product team understand the gaps that your customers consistently hit, and then they likely know them, but how do you enforce the need to fix them? And so I think that kind of question kind of feeds into this a little bit of just like how do you work internally with your org, and how is CX connected to the general business? And I think this ultimately it's got to start with the top. Like you got to be an organization that values customer feedback, but I found a lot of success when it comes to finding a way to tie your customer data to your company's OKRs, like objectives and key results or missions or values or whatever the goal is for that quarter or for that month or for that year. How can your data support that those goals essentially? And it's also just I find the most success when patterns are backed by data. So it's not just, anecdotal data that you're saying, hey, this is what we're seeing, but it makes up 50% of our tickets, or it's making up, this many percentage of our interaction, and it's got a poor CSAT attributed to it. And if there's a way that you can tie it to revenue as well, I think that's where you can really get people to like perk their ears and listen a little bit more. Along with, it's always helpful coming up with potential solutions as well, just to say that, you're want to work with product, you want to work with them in getting to an end result, versus saying, hey, I've highlighted the problem, now it's up to you to fix it. Like we're partners in this. We all work at the company. We all want to see our customers succeed. And so I think those are great ways of doing it. And then also just like hold quarterly updates or monthly updates or whatever that is, and try to like share that data more so with people. I think people in product, on the engineering teams, they want to know what they're building is having a good effect with customers. And so they want to hear what users have to say. And so don't be shy in sharing those insights. And if you feel strong about something and maybe it didn't land the first time, go back to the drawing board and be like, okay, did I come with enough insights or enough data? Did I tie it to a revenue metric? As I think very, very important to do that. So yeah, that's how I would kind of answer that.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about like just tracking these impacts, because I know that's kind of its own problem to unpack, and we can definitely talk about that next. Just making the link between we did this and it caused this, and being able to have the data to back those kind of actions that you're taking. Val, do you want to jump in? Maybe just back to the question about practical application in your organization. How are you tying CX to business growth?
Yeah, it took us a while to get to a central place where we're tracking feature, product requests, overall sentiment and feedback that comes from a multitude of different data sources, such as social media, overall customer support tickets, success team interviews, et cetera, like the list goes on. And it was quite hard to centralize it, but now we have this option to have it a central view, and we have recurring company-wide shared information based on that. And it's great to see from across the entire company, there's a lot of interest as to how, fulfillment is going, as to how, if there is any confusion around the platform within the product teams, where is it coming from? Of course, besides that, there's also user research, et cetera, that goes on. So I'd say that now nobody is building and releasing things blindly. They have a very, very close connection with overall customer sentiment and feedback, which is heartwarming for me, because I see that it's no longer seen, like I was saying, just as a cost center. It's really used as a data source, as a data source for future progress and for future growth and retention.
Sure. Yeah. Siobhan, anything else on that? I'll pick on y'all because it's all more servicey, and then we can ask Luis kind of how that looks in more of the product e-com kind of side of things.
I feel like Stephen saw what I was thinking to answer this
Sure.
question, and really did cover a lot of that. I think because that's exactly what you do is you look at the OKRs of the company and you think, okay, well, how can support that? So, for example, I know we had a business goal at Heartbeat. Well, it wasn't really a goal, but we knew that once a community had made so much money within like the first 30 days, that they would be more likely to stick around, right? So that means that in support, we can pull in some data to prioritize tickets that are in their trial period, and we can see, like, do they have, are they set up in order to be making money? Like, did they get their membership offers set up correctly? Can people pay them? That kind of thing. And so when you look at the ticket holistically, because they write in like, well, I'm having trouble with my landing page, but then you can be like, oh, by the way, I've also noticed that, you didn't connect Stripe yet, and we want to make sure that you're successful, blah, blah, blah. And it sounds a bit like a success motion, but you're trying to enable your customers to be successful. So when you can do that and do it well, it doesn't feel like a sales pitch to the person or to the customer. It just feels like you're helping them be successful with this product. And suddenly they're on the next tier up. Cool. So.
Yeah. Advice and product help is pretty welcomed with open arms in my experience, like just giving people assistance, optimizing things for them. Definitely. I like that your call out about identifying tickets that are from people in their trial period. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of like metrics and tracking that you do as far as who is this person that this ticket is coming from. But yeah, that definitely seems like a pretty obvious group to give the white glove service towards and really excel with them.
One thing I meant to say, you can look at that in cohorts. This was our growth guy that I worked with at Heartbeat was amazing, Mike. And he had all these nifty reports about the cohorts of people. So people that started a trial, between May 1st and May 31st, right? So then we can look at all of that. You can compare it to all of your data that's in Zendesk and, others, stuff coming in from PostHog, whatever. And if you put all of that together in some kind of like MCP thing, you can query all of that data together and see, okay, so for this cohort of May people that had started their trial, how many reached out to support, how many upgraded, and you can make some correlations there. Even if it's not direct, you can still see, well, looks like, X, Y, and Z happened, and then money. So cool. This is what we're going to do.
Yeah. Luis, to add on to that?
Sure. I think that's some valuable insight. I have a brand with a digital product, and I think we need to make the connection and join.
There we go.
Especially that we're doing, we're slow rolling on that brand. But anyways, I think, for us, I think it was like almost like systematic, like retention, right? Like, so I come in, obviously I'm assigned or whatever. I'm asked to, tackle these concerns. Our CEO is like, he's a marketing guy. So he's telling me, he's looking at marketing efficiency. I'm like, what are these metrics that I've never really paid attention to, right? But, the cost, to acquire the customer and what's it doing and retention. And so I was like, okay, so what we really did was like, we really just built everything that was like hardcore retention, like I said earlier, into like our self-service portal. And we just said, you know what, we're just going to let them handle it themselves. When they go through these flows, they're going to go through it. They're going to say yes or no. Maybe the button was a little confusing, and we'll deal with that at customer support. Maybe you clicked on the 40% off and you didn't mean to, but ideally, I think that's what we did, right? And we took that systematic approach, saying, look, we're going to do the hard, like the really, really like heavy friction. We're going to automate it, and then the light friction is like, hey, you know what? Let's just come in. let's wow the customer, give them what they want, let them keep the product. If we can do a light save, like let's adjust the frequency, let's pause the subscription. Let's work on that, right? Because the bulk of our customers are going to go through self-service, right? That's what the data tells. And that's what the data shows, or presents. So I think that for us, that is how we started to build that value, right? And I know it, as the CEO started bugging me, or at least bugging the director about these metrics, and so I moved on to other tasks, But I think that's how we showed, that business growth, and we were able to, really solidify who we were, and kind of like get us out of that silo.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. And the tracking piece, I think that's kind of it's definitely its own topic, but I am curious, and I'm sure, you've got probably 20 different softwares that you use. And Siobhan, you mentioned like MCP, so like bringing all these softwares into one place. But just, anything you can say about tracking the impact of the CX team, and we can start with Steven. Is there any? And we don't have to think of all the ways that you track the impact of the CX team, but I guess what would be your go-to methods for looking at how is my team or how is my organization impacting the growth of the business? Like, how on earth do you prove that? Like, where are you getting that data from that you talked about, needing in terms of shaping roadmap and things like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right now, the majority of our interactions are done through Zendesk. That is changing slightly as I think email is becoming a more outdated support method, and we are transitioning to be a little bit more chat focused and chat forward. And so knowing that we have, a great product like Tidio, it gives us a lot of confidence in being able to achieve that. And so within Zendesk, there already is tons of really great reporting that already exists. Our team is very data focused. So we've got lots of macros and tagging for anyone familiar with Zendesk. It's just a great way to kind of understand like what are the most common inquiry types and most kind of common processes that we're following. So a lot of it lives within that as well. And then it's just having those conversations around the OKRs as well, and just how can we support those OKRs. So we're in the transition right now of just the org becoming a little bit more aware of the importance of the data that our customers provide. And so trying to find a way to position our team to be more of like a central intelligence hub for our member data is just kind of seen as a cost center. So we're in that transition process right now of trying to give more individuals access to our overall kind of customer interactions. And even to the point of like, for a lot of the PMs, like the product managers, like to hear what members are actually saying versus just anecdotal. So can we build tooling where they can like search our tickets, or how can we leverage AI to be able to do that? Or create more interactions with our individuals, whether that's through like member interviews, or just like test groups, or giving people early access to new features. So a lot of it is just through those quarterly updates that we do, and we send out weekly updates as well, just trying to inform as many people as we can about what we're kind of hearing and seeing on our side.
Sure. Yeah. Makes total sense. Siobhan, you want to jump in there as far as, maybe just your most notable call outs as far as being able to actually track the impact that the CX team is having?
Yeah, I think that if you have a good relationship with product, and you're bringing, business cases, use cases to them, however it is that your team decides to rate this up, whether it's just a, quick Jira ticket, or, maybe it's something larger that you really want them to address, you can track the tickets related to that topic once they have rolled out the fix or the change, whatever that is. And you'd be able to see like, oh, okay, well, we no longer get this many tickets, which we're taking, 5 to 10 hours a week, which is, almost a full person's, workload. So looking at it like that, something that I like to do as well. Sometimes if there was an issue that seemed to be a bit, I don't know, persnickety, like it seemed like it was low hanging fruit, but we just weren't able to like, get through somehow to the product team we were trying to convey, is we could just tie it back to money and be like, well, these tickets are costing us in salary for support X amount of dollars or euros. Do you want to be spending that money or, for support to do this forever? Or would you like to spend that money on some engineering time and then we won't ask you about this anymore?
Sure.
And, that would help a lot because you can just see the like sort of, I guess, cost analysis there of what's going on. We can fix something and not hear about it again, or we can just keep spending money to tell people that this is broken and here's the workaround.
It's also just absolutely draining to be helping with the same problem, especially a known problem, over and over and over again. Yeah, and watching that persist. So,
yeah. And I mean, honestly, product does have their own priorities. I'm not trying to say that they don't listen. I've had great relationships with the product teams at both companies. But yeah, it's just like anything else. Sometimes you think something's important and someone else doesn't until you find the right way to say it. And
Sure. Val, tracking in terms of tracking and specifically the growth impact, maybe. What's your team typically looking to? What are you looking at?
We look at a lot of different things. Well, one thing is the efficiency of support teams and overall customer facing teams is, of course, it has to be there. That's one thing. But besides that, there is a lot of things that go into qualitative data, right? So when you talk about specifically prevented churn or reduced anxiety or regained confidence or operational trust, all of these things compile a successful business down the line if you see that it's going well, right? So these things, you can measure proxies, right? But you cannot a lot of it is probability. A lot of it is maybe for some obvious or non-obvious impact, but there isn't always clear metrics that define success in some of these areas, right? You can say that, okay, clearly our sentiment is great here because we've tracked it, because customers gave us feedback, we must be good, but how come we're not growing there? Well, probably because at the time that you took those surveys or however you received those that feedback, something else was piling up that was causing frustration, and they ended up just clicking yes, okay, fine. Like when you go through a airport security check and you have those little plates that say rate your experience with the smiley faces, might be fine and you rate cool positive, but then you step out a couple I don't know, 10 steps away and something happens and you're not happy with the support at all. And then you leave a really shitty review somewhere
You're like,
else.
where's that button at so I can go hit it again and change it?
So that's the thing with customer experience and overall relationship building and the sentiment. It's a lot of the things cannot be quantified as much as some I'd say higher level leadership would like, but there is this need for certainty for human behavior problems, but they're not inherently obvious. They're probabilistic,
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes total sense. A lot of times people want like exact numbers and figures about business impact, and you're like, but wait, just listen to the scope and it just makes sense. Like this just sounds like the right thing to do. And unfortunately, that's not enough to get everyone on board, and for good reason. So no, that's super helpful. And I just want to time check because we are kind of nearing the end of this, and I want to make sure that we include this specific question, and we can hear from each panelist today. But what advice would you give to CX leaders who want to position their teams as strategic partners in driving growth? So can be a helpful pointer, any advice. It could be specific to your industry. The first thing that comes to mind as far as making sure that you have that growth mindset when you're thinking about the CX team. Luis, you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, I think that from an e-commerce perspective, like really understanding like your save metrics, your brand reputation. I think those are the things that like at least the CEO, the founders, that's what they're looking at. You want to stay on top of it. It's like the biggest. I think those are like the biggest metrics that we could take out for myself that I'm constantly having to drive, because I'm basically trying to stay in front of like CEO or the director catching anything. So I want to make sure that we have everything on top, and it's an upward battle. So, but that would be my advice.
Brand image. It reverberates like across the entire org. And a lot of what you discussed too is just getting rid of friction. And so if something felt hard or frustrating for the customer, let's get rid of that. And then all that leads to brand image. And so maybe you're not trying to stop anyone from walking out the door, but you definitely don't want the door to have a bad name for itself so that other people don't want to come through that door and do business with you. So makes sense.
Yeah. And we came from like this old churn and burn model. So like to like really
Sure.
reverse course, to like switch the mindset. It's like an upward battle, but we were successful. But just stay on it, and you'll get you'll win.
Sure. 100%. Love that. Steven, we'll call on you. One piece of advice, CX leaders.
Of course. I think it comes back to like my previous point before. I think we are the front lines, and so we get a lot of those interactions. We know what our members want, and so how can we position ourselves to be strategic partners to like specifically answer your question? I think that's just bring up those patterns, bring up those pain points backed by data. I think that's the most important tool that we have to really get people to listen and understand the impact of certain decisions. And so I think that's just like really important as CX leaders, is you have to be the voice of the members, or members, customers. You have to be the voice, and raising those points backed by data is just so important in my experience.
The answers are in there. You just have to go in and find them and kind of find those trends. Definitely. Siobhan?
What Steven said, you got to bring the stuff back by data. The harsh reality is that no one cares that you have a lot of tickets. That's not ever going to matter to anyone outside of support. What they are going to care about is, why are there a lot of tickets? So actionable insights is your focus if you want to be a strategic partner in the business. And be like, oh, we get a lot of tickets because people have trouble logging in because they're not getting the magic link email. Or we get a lot of tickets because people get halfway through setting up this feature and then they have to ask us a question. That's impacting adoption. That's impacting retention. So if you're using those terms around the growth motion of the company to describe the problems that you are seeing, not that you're having, you are seeing problems. Problems that you have in support are, I have too many tickets and how do we organize them? Problems for the business are, we have a lot of tickets about this login issue. And if people can't log in, then they can't use the platform, then they're going to cancel. And, so actionable insights backed by data. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Even when we're speaking with companies who have never put any sort of frontline AI tool on their website or exposed it to customers, like one of the very first things we need to have a general understanding of is, what is the reason for contact for your tickets? And so sometimes we even take it to the point of doing like full-blown audits, and maybe we'll look at, all right, over the past 6 months, what were all your contact reasons? Because then we can start to build an agent that addresses those contact reasons. So no, that makes total sense, and we feel the same thing on our end. Take us home, Val. One piece of advice for CX leaders, tying your org to growth.
I think in addition to all the advice mentioned here, I'd also add that it's like to basically enable everything that has been said. I think it's really important to be cross-functional. So that means that you really understand operations, you understand product, because being a silo starts somewhere. Yes, it's not that you were placed into a silo and it just works that way. You have to be that bridge, you have to be that bridge. You have to talk to finance, you have to talk to data teams, you have to really have a wonderful grasp of the customer personas and the psychology of the people that you work with that are your customers. And just then can you actually not over romanticize empathy, but put it all together as a business lead. In my opinion, that's the strongest CX leads really get, not just the understanding of the customer psychology, but also how the business functions and what is needed to, really be strong in that sense.
make allies with all the other departments and yeah, keep those bonds super close. I feel the same thing working on like the pre-sales side of things. I have no choice but to be on amazing terms with everyone at the company. And if someone needs something, I'm the first one to help them with it, because I will inevitably need something as well. Well, we are in our final minute, and I just want to say thanks again to the panelists, all of you, for taking the time to meet with us today. I think it was a really nice discussion. I know at least Luis, you said you learned something, so we're already one step in the right direction there. And thank you to everyone who tuned in live and in terms of the attendees that have been watching us. And thank you for everyone that might watch the recorded version later on today.
Thanks, everybody.
Alrighty.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
y'all.
Fun to be here.
Bye.
Everybody.